Hello and welcome to this new video in the SQL content. In this video, we will learn about important data types for string. We already have seen few of them, but today we will understand details about them. So here's where we will understand the data types like char, varchar max, nchar and nvarchar. So let's get started. Although we have seen few things about these data types earlier and we have understood them to some extent, and this video will explain you a lot of them about these data types in depth. So let's say I create TBL, let's say TXT data types, and let's say I have something called as employee name. Okay, I choose as char, and then let's say city as varchar. This is the first basic thing that we will understand. So if I run this and if I check the structure of the table, I'll double click the table name and do Alt F1. So now I see this section wherein we are familiar with right now because we did this earlier. So Alt F1 gives me the table details. The second section gives me the table column names and the data type. So the first learning in this example is that when you specify char and varchar, look at that. When you highlight it, it shows varchar1, char1. So if you look at the length, by default it is 1. Alright. So what does that mean is that you can, to get started with on a very basic level or introductory level, it means that you can pass only one character. So when you insert into this table, let's say employee name and city values. So if I pass, let's say ABC, and here I am passing XYZ, for example, you execute. What happens? So it will throw an error stating the string or binary data would be truncated. The column employee name truncated value A. If you observe, select star from table name, the data has not been inserted. Why? Because by default this are only accepting one characters. So you can pass only one character. You'll have to reduce this in this way. If you run and it has gone through. Okay, that was the first learning. However, most of the times you specify some number, and the way to do that would be nothing but, which we have already seen. Here, you specify the digits. Now, what do these digits mean? So, for example, if I specify like 5 over here and 5. So, the first difference that you have to understand is between char and varchar. Char is fixed length and varchar is variable length. When you are 100% sure that you know that every single row or value which will be inserted in this employee name or any column on which you use char data type, that you know that yes, you know the length of it will be constant. Like in this case, I'm saying char of 5, which means that I'm 100% confident that and guarantee that every value inserted in this will always have 5 characters. So that is nothing but called as fixed length. In that scenario, I will use char. But most of the time that is not true, because in case of, let's say, employee name or city, the number of characters or the length, let's say, will not be the same. It will vary. So that's why we need to use variable length of character. That is the difference over here. The impact it could create is, let's say if you insert something over here. Okay, we can make this as TBL type 2. And then select star from this. Okay, fine. Now let me copy this and paste over here in single quotes. I'll copy this as well, XYZ, and paste in single quote. This is the biggest difference that you will understand. So when I say char of 5, it will allocate 5 characters for it. Technically to, right now to get started, although there is much more deeper meaning into this, we will understand that. But for right now, for simple, because we are just using plain simple English characters, this is easier to understand. That ABC is 3 characters, but I said 5. So no matter how many characters you write, it will always allocate 5 characters or space for it, which is kind of an overhead and unnecessary. Whereas if you write XYZ, and even if I've written varchar of 5, it will still only allocate those many spaces, or rather, let's say that particular storage for the number of the characters that you have. So that's why I said, when you're 100% confident that you know that the characters will always be 5, then that's where you can go with char, or else you will see that varchar is more preferred. All right. Now, the one thing that you have to understand is that very often it is a misconception that 5 denotes the number of characters in varchar, char, or nchar or nvarchar, what we will learn. However, that is true only to a certain extent. The reason is because there are some characters which take 1 byte of space, whereas there are some characters which take multi-byte space. There can be characters like somewhat in maybe in different languages, like let's say Hindi or Russian or Arabic or anything. They require, or any other characters typically you could call up, they require multi-bytes of space to store. So at times you would see that characters other than our normal alphabets which are there in English language, so such thing or any other typically you could think of, that there are multi-byte characters also. That's all you got to know, that they will take more than 1 byte of space. So this is nothing but called as n, where n, it is often thought of that yes, it is the number of characters. That is true only when you have single byte characters. So if I say varchar of 5 or char of 5, which means yes, 5 single byte characters. But at times when you will have, let's say, 1 multi-byte character which takes 2 bytes, and then you try to insert, so you will be consuming 2 bytes for 1 character and you are only left with 3 more bytes. So which means you can only end up inserting 4 characters over there. So this typically today you will understand that yes, so that's why I said this n doesn't really mean the number of characters. It is only true to an extent where if all of them are single byte, then you can say yes, char of 5 means 5 characters. But if there are multi-byte characters, then it will be less. Okay, that's the broad base understanding that you have need to have, but you don't have to worry much on this. Just keep that in mind. But primarily remember the difference between char and varchar. Next thing. Now, I say there is something also wherein we need to test the upper limit of this. So in order to test the upper limit, how far can you go in char? You can go in char as far as 8,000. Okay. So let me say char of this. How about varchar? Varchar also let us try 8,000. All right. And create, double click on this and Alt F1. So here you see the length is 8,000. Fine. Can you go beyond that? Let us say something like 8,100. Let me change the table name. Okay, so no, it clearly says the size given to the column employee name exceeds maximum allowed for any data type, which is 8,000. All right, so that proves it. I'll change this to here, and even if I see, look at this, it says it has invalid data type, but let me force it, and again the same error. So this is conclude that maximum the size can be 8,000. All right. There is another data type in varchar called as varchar max. So what does that mean? If you write varchar max, and now if you do Alt F1, so varchar max, it means the maximum capacity. And what is that capacity? That's what you need to know. So that is nothing but it spans up to 2 GB. That's what is the limit of the varchar max. And as we go further, we will understand when to use varchar max or just stick to a normal varchar. Okay, fine. And there are also few more things that I'll let you know, which varchar max doesn't give you, whereas varchar will give you. But then this is not the right time to talk about it because we have to still learn about those things. Fine. Now, finally, since we have seen the char and varchar difference, now the time comes about nchar and varchar. So what does this n denote over here? The n denotes Unicode. So you need to learn, or rather, if you are interested, you can read about this Unicode thing over the Google and understand exactly how the encoding happens. But in short, to tell you, there are Unicodes, okay, for each character, and the difference between char and nchar is that the first thing is about the size. So each character will take mostly like 1 byte of size in char, but here it will take double, which is 2 bytes. Hence, the maximum capacity of nchar is half, because each of the character will take double the size. So the maximum capacity will be 4000. And similarly here as well, can you do 8000? No. So this will also be 4. And similarly, you can have n varchar max also. So for example, let me copy this. And execute. Okay, you get some warning. The table has been created, but its maximum row size exceeds the allowed row size. Okay, fine. We'll check on that one. Let us come back over here. So here you are. Data type 5. Okay, nchar, varchar, varchar. Now look at the difference. Though in the length it says 8000 over here. Okay, but we see 4000 over here. So what happens is, the simple thing that you have to understand is the max limit of nchar and varchar is 4000, whereas for char and varchar it is 8000. And the simple reason for that is because nchar or n data types, which are Unicode data types, they take twice the space of the char and varchar. Okay, char stands for character, varchar stands for variable length of character. All right. So these are some differences. Now what I've observed is, I can tell you by experience, especially when you use varchar, nchar or varchar, again the fundamental difference between nchar and varchar is same what is like the char and varchar, because this is fixed length and this is variable length. It's only that these n data types are Unicode data types. So for example, if you have some special languages like Russia, Arabic or any other thing, if you try to define the data types for these columns as char and you try to insert the data will not be visible. So instead, if you use nchar or varchar, depending on fixed or variable length, mostly you will end up using varchar. So that will not only insert the data for sure, but it will show or detect that particular symbol or character in a very appropriate way. All right. So hope this now enlightens you about these data types, and these are very important to understand. As we go further, we'll be very careful and more specific about these. So that's it in this video. See you in the next one.